It's a bright and early morning in Mumbai today, and we're on an endurance test of sorts, quite like the people out here on their morning walks. Now, the Tata Nexon EV, especially in this long-range max form, has been your go-to electric car if you wanted something that will do pretty much everything that you want from a family car. But it's got its biggest competitor yet, priced very similarly, which is the Mahindra XUV400. So today, let's just get in, drive and see how they perform. So quick status check before we set up. The XUV400 is at 94% battery and it's done 3.9 kilometers so far. The Nexon EV Max, we've been driving it a bit. It's at 85% battery and has done 30.7 kilometers. So we're in the middle of the city now. Now the next time we see you, we'll be on the expressway heading towards Lonavala. So we'll give you a lowdown on how these cars perform on the highway. Mahindra has gone back to the original SsangYong Tivoli body shell for the XUV400, packaging the battery pack under the rear seat and boot, making it 207mm longer, 10mm wider and 18mm taller than the Nexon EV Max. Notably, Mahindra has reworked the charge port into the front left fender, while the Tata still uses the ICE's fuel filler space to fit its charging socket. This does make the Mahindra easier to drive up to chargers. Conversely, you miss out on fog lamps with the Mahindra. The Mahindra XUV400 makes 150 PS and 310 Nm, while the Tata Nexon EV Max puts out 143 PS and 250 Nm. But for this test, we decided to leave the Nexon EV Max in its city drive mode with the XUV400 in its fun setting. Both EVs seem quite similar in performance in these modes, the Tata making a reduced 98 PS and 170 Nm, and the Mahindra limiting top speed to 95 kmph. So now we've spent some time driving. We're out on the expressway headed to Lonavala, and here's the status of charge. The Nexon EV Max has done 104 kilometers on the trip and it's at 60% charge. The XUV400 has done 74 and it's at 71% charge. The Tata deploys its performance in a more polished way. Both limit torque at low throttle application, but the ramp up is more linear in the Nexon EV Max. It's also able to switch to regen more naturally off throttle. The Mahindra's more abrupt shift can take some getting used to. A notable difference is that the Nexon EV Max gets regen modes, which we left in the first level for the highway stint, while the XUV400 has these tied in with the modes, so there's less in the way of fine-tuning your driving experience. So yeah, now that we are driving it on the highway, both cars first of all have great ride quality here. They seem to be quite sure-footed, although it must be said that over some of the rougher imperfections on the highway, the XUV400 slightly softer suspension setup does seem to help it over these surfaces. That being said, where you get a lot of confidence from the Nexon EV Max is through the steering. It's really stable, really sure-footed. In the XUV400, you are making constant corrections, small corrections, but you are making them to keep the car going straight, which can get slightly irritating, but at the speeds that we are doing, 80, 90, that isn't too much of a problem. In terms of how they're performing in terms of efficiency, the Nexon EV Max again seems to be marginally more efficient, and that seems to be in the way the battery is delivering its power and generally the smoother working of the motor and the regen system. We've been keeping the Nexon EV Max at level 2 regen, which is about what you would expect in terms of engine braking from a regular car on the highway, while the XUV400 has been in the fun mode. There's no eco mode as such in that car. So yeah, they're both similar in terms of the regen effect that they're giving, but it just seems that the Nexon EV Max does it a touch more seamlessly. In our regular driving haunts around Lonavala, the Nexon EV Max's tauter dynamics impressed again. The more consistent power delivery, the more natural steering, and the lesser body roll than the XUV400 make it about as exciting as you might want your family SUV to be. The XUV400's straight-line performance is blistering as our rolling and standing acceleration times suggest, but its more comfort-focused suspension shows limitations here. So now we've reached the first half of our journey. We are right at the top of Lonavala, and bear in mind it's been an 85-kilometer climb to get here. First through the full Ghat section of the expressway and then right up through the hills of Lonavala. So the Nexon EV Max, remember it had slightly less charge when we started. It's done 153 kilometers and has about 32% charge left. And the XUV400 it's done 125 kilometers and has 43% charge left. From here on, we're going to go back downhill. It's easy because it's going to be a lot of downhill, so we won't have to manage charge all that much. And then we're going to go charge this in Lonavala in a fast charger and then take it from there. The Tata and the Mahindra are similarly spec'd in terms of battery sizes. The Tata has a 40.5 kilowatt-hour pack and the XUV400 a 39.4 kilowatt-hour pack. However, they differ in terms of battery chemistry. Mahindra has gone the nickel manganese cobalt way, while the Tata uses lithium iron phosphate cells, both of which are variations of lithium ion technology. Now the Nexon EV Max and the XUV400, they're based on ICE cars that have been around a while, so neither the cabins will be the most cutting edge. And to be fair, the one in the XUV is wider, so you get that added sense of space, even though you have all black cabin, which the Nexon EV Max sort of counters to an extent by this very nice use of textures and materials. For example, you have this textured finish here, the blue highlighting, the blue grading here and the beige. So it gives you that sense of space even though it's not as big a cabin as the XUV400. But what you really do like, what is really helpful, especially considering that this is an EV and no matter what there will always be an element of range anxiety, is this instrument cluster. It gives you some really good data. It's clearly visible, especially in comparison to the really small MID readout in the XUV400. So you always have a decent idea of the kind of range that you're getting. And the fact that it changes with the regen modes and the drive modes is another big help. Now, another thing which is probably not that great is the seating position compared to the XUV400. You sit in a slightly odd position. The view out is not that great to start with. The steering is at a slightly odd angle. And the seats, they're not as wide, so if you are, say, of a wider frame, then you will like the seats in the XUV400. But if you're of a narrower frame, then these sort of cocoon you better. Among other things that are not as great as in the XUV400 is practicality. You get one bottle holder here, but there are no cup holders in the center. So yeah, that is another miss. And really not much in terms of storage here as well. But where the Nexon EV Max really does go over the XUV400 is in terms of features. So you get a similar 7-inch screen. Again, neither of them will set the world alight in terms of how cutting edge they are, but this is still more functional, better in terms of features than the one in the XUV400. You get a PM 2.5 air filter in this to start with, connected tech. And that continues with these nice physical buttons. You don't get physical buttons here, which is a bit of a miss considering you do in the XUV400. And another useful touch is these buttons here to lock, unlock the charging port, the hill descent control, which is a nice touch. And then you come here, you notice that you have features like an automatic parking brake, which is quite useful. This rotary dial, again, like in the one on the XUV400, it's not the easiest gear selector to use. You'll be fiddling around, especially when you want to do 3-pointed turns. So that's not that great, but it's still a bit easier than the one on the XUV400, where we have to jab at the brake quite hard to change, but it depends whether you like one or the other. Now the long list of features continues with cruise control. You have auto headlamps and wipers, and the most important one for India, the ventilated seats. And of course, wireless charging, it's another nice feature to have. So this sort of pretty much covers up how the two fare in terms of their front seat. Now another feature that we're really lacking on this very hot day where temperatures are close to 40 degrees is this automatic climate control function with an economy feature, which the Nexon EV Max gives you. And to be honest, it works really quite well. Much better than the one in the XUV400. It's a manual AC in that one. But yeah, in terms of how effective they are, this is still working better on this very hot day today. In terms of boot space, the XUV400 is slightly larger on paper, 378 litres versus the Nexon EV Max's 350. But this comes at the cost of a spare wheel. But the loading lip is far lower. The Tata Nexon EV Max and the Mahindra XUV400 again take different approaches with safety. The XUV400 will give you 6 airbags in this top trim, while the Nexon EV Max only makes do with 2. That said, the XUV400 is missing some critical active safety equipment, especially in the context of EVs. These are ESC, hill hold and hill descent control. We found the XUV400 can roll back on a slope
and with the high torque output is also quite drastic wheel spin and torque steer for you to contend with on hard acceleration in the more potent modes.
Now the XUV400 has a 102 mm wheelbase advantage over the Nexon EV Max, and it's also about 10 mm wider. Although it isn't immediately apparent because of this all black color scheme, you feel a bit cozier. But aside from that, in terms of absolute space, this does have the advantage. So you have more leg room, you have more headroom, and you also have more shoulder room. And the bench is also much wider, so 3 adults will be more comfortable here than in the Nexon EV Max. And in terms of comfort, you sit in an easier position as you usually do in these EVs with the slightly high floor, but it's not as much in the Nexon EV Max. But what the Nexon EV Max does is, with those extended squabs, you get back some of that under thigh support, which you don't in this. Now the seat back angle is very similar to the one in the Nexon EV Max, and both of the cushionings here, they're slightly on the firmer side. So while it may not be great initially, over a longer journey you will be more comfortable. Now some of the misses over here compared to the Nexon EV Max, of course both get a sunroof, it's a single pane one, but so there is a bit more air and light coming into this cabin, but you don't get any sort of charging over here or a rear AC vent, which the Nexon EV Max gives you. It only gives you a 12 volt outlet, but at least it's there, which this doesn't have at all. So yeah, if you want an EV between the two of the ones that are here that are more spacious in the back seat, then this should probably be the one for you.
The Nexon EV Max, after the recent software update, now has an ARAI certified range of 453 km against the XUV400's 456 km. But the real world range figures tell a different story. It must be noted though that we recouped quite a bit of energy on our downhill run back and drove hard for our shoots, which has gotten the highway and city efficiency numbers close to each other. It also shows that you can really use these EVs for weekend trips or as a daily commuter without charging more than a few times a week. Both fast charge at up to 50 kilowatts. The XUV does it slightly quicker on paper, getting up to 80% in 56 minutes, while the Nexon EV Max takes 50 minutes. But charging the two EVs at different fast chargers and on slow AC charging, we found that these numbers do not make much real world difference. Both can AC charge at up to 7.2 kilowatts, taking about 6.5 hours. The Nexon is 2 hours slower with the 3.3 kilowatt charger.
So now we've been driving these two EVs in the city in South Mumbai traffic for a fair bit now. I'm in the XUV400, which has done 46 kilometers, and it's done it in about 20% battery. Started at 86, now it's at 66. And as for the Nexon EV, it started at 80, it's at 68 now, and it's covered about 29 kilometers. Now, a big difference, we've been driving both these cars, the XUV for example in their fun mode, and the Nexon EV in the normal mode with the highest region. Although before the XUV we did shift to the L one pedal driving mode, which has helped its efficiency because you don't need to use the brakes too much. It has real one pedal driving. It will actually come to a halt, unlike the Nexon EV, which slows right down to a crawl but does not stop.
It's much easier to modulate speed in traffic in the Tata despite there not being a one pedal driving mode as in the Mahindra. The Nexon EV Max has a more natural feeling brake pedal which makes stopping more confident. The Mahindra's abrupt switch from drive to regen again hampers it here.
And as for the driving experience, it's clear that in the XUV400 you have a better view out. The windscreen is wider, you can see the edges of the larger bonnet much more easily. And there's a less of a blind spot here. In the Nexon EV there's a really large A-pillar and big mirrors. The mirrors here are slightly smaller, the A-pillar isn't as large, so that helps. And in terms of ride too, the XUV does fare a little bit better in the city. At low speeds with the frequency selective damping that's in this car, you realize that it takes those low speed bumps which most EVs don't do. They have that firm edge to them. This still has it, but it's not nearly as much as in the Nexon EVs. So over these metro ravaged roads, if you will, the XUV400 is slightly more comfortable. It also has less pitch and dive, even though the Nexon EV does have a tauter suspension generally. So in terms of driving in the city, the XUV400 is more comfortable.
The Mahindra XUV400 is a strong first effort. It's bigger both inside and out than the Nexon EV Max, has blistering performance and is reasonably efficient in isolation. The Tata Nexon EV Max though shows what a head start can do for you in a new segment and with new technology. It feels like a more complete package with its better efficiency, better integrated drivetrain and more tweakable modes. You also have more choices in terms of variants and features, which adds to it being more approachable. Prices for the Nexon EV Max start from Rs 17.57 lakh, while the single long-range variant of the Mahindra XUV400 costs Rs 20 lakh. The comparable Nexon EV Max costs about Rs 20.19 lakh.